The Oklahoma City bombing was a terrorist attack in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, United States, on April 19, 1995, in which a massive homemade bomb composed of more than 2 tons of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and fuel oil concealed in a rental truck exploded, heavily damaging the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. A total of 168 people were killed, including 19 children, and more than 500 were injured. The damage was later cleaned up and a park was built on the site. The bombing remained the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil until the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City and the Pentagon outside Washington, D.C. in 2001. Although at first suspicion wrongly focused on Middle Eastern terrorist groups, attention quickly centered on Timothy McVeigh, who had been arrested shortly after the explosion for a traffic violation, and his friend Terry Nichols. Both were former U.S. Army soldiers and were associated with the extreme right-wing and militant Patriot movement. 2 days after the bombing and shortly before he was to be released for his traffic violation, McVeigh was identified and charged as a suspect, and Nichols later voluntarily surrendered to police. McVeigh was convicted on 11 counts of murder, conspiracy, and using a weapon of mass destruction, and was executed in 2001, the first person executed for a federal crime in the United States since 1963. Nichols avoided the death penalty, but was convicted of conspiracy and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to life in prison. Other associates were convicted of failing to inform authorities about their prior knowledge of the conspiracy, and some observers believe that still other participants were involved in the attack. Although McVeigh and Nichols were not directly connected with any major political group, they held views characteristic of the broad Patriot movement, which feared authoritarian plots by the U.S. federal government and corporate elites. At its most extreme, the Patriot movement denied the legitimacy of federal government and law enforcement. One manifestation of the rightist upsurge was the formation of armed militia groups, which, according to some sources, claimed a national membership of about 30,000 by the mid-1990s. The militias justified their existence by claiming a right to armed self-defense against an allegedly oppressive government. In this context, the date of the Oklahoma City attack was very significant, falling on 2 notable anniversaries. April 19th marked both Patriots' Day, the anniversary of the American Rebellion against British authority at Lexington, Massachusetts in 1775, and the date on which federal agents brought the Waco siege to a culmination by raiding the compound of the heavily armed Branch Davidian religious sect in Waco, Texas in 1993. McVeigh claimed that the building in Oklahoma City was targeted to avenge more than 70 deaths at Waco. Following the Oklahoma City attack, media and law enforcement officials began intense investigations of the militia movement and other armed extremist groups. A chain-link fence that was erected shortly after the bombing to protect the site soon became a makeshift memorial to those killed in the incident and was decorated with condolence messages, poems, and countless other mementos. That fence became part of the permanent outdoor symbolic memorial, which also includes a reflecting pool and a field of 168 empty chairs that was dedicated in the year 2000. A year later, the museum portion of Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum was opened.
It's an Oklahoma State agency and deals with all aspects of water. They set
homegrown terrorism. It tested us, but rather than running away from the destruction, we ran toward the bombed buildings to help.
I just got in my truck and headed toward the
He went
city.
straight to the side to get command
That's
post
the best trip I've ever made in my life.
He ran out with us.
Began running towards the people that were running
We
home.
identified ourselves and we were let through the police line.
Lines and lines of people waiting to try to give, to do something. People just wanted to do something.
On that
Draft up what's called a findings of fact, conclusions of law, and a proposed order, which will be mailed to all the parties about 15 days before the Oklahoma Water Resources Board meets. They actually, they sit in this room and discuss the application and vote whether to approve or deny the application. So they're the decision makers. And you'll receive a copy of my proposed recommendation and can attend that board meeting and present your information directly to them or arguments directly to the 9-member board. They generally meet the second Tuesday of every month. So you'll be advised of that. With regard to this proceeding, basically there are 4 elements that I have to receive information regarding. Everybody, let me out of here. Now, what's the electricity on? What's on? Yeah.
Time and after 9 o'clock, we go as far away as Channel 9. That's a good at least 5 miles from downtown. I got some ladies. They were screaming, and we sort of walked in.
And I couldn't get very close, which bothered me. You know, I wanted to get as close as I could.
And I'm not proud of it, but my first reaction was this.
Clear that this was home from American terrorism, and it was shocking.
We watched the White House as soon
Lots of people are turning out. I believe we have some video of some people who had some food or other items that they think can be of benefit. So right now they need D-cell batteries, and we have to come on 30 minutes later. So
giant vegetable processor that's bigger than the pancake area. The average size of the average floor was packed. I measured so I would never forget. Was a distance between the palm of my hand and my elbow.
Harrington, Kansas is much like Perry, Oklahoma. Main Street is paved with family values and quiet living.
Do such a thing, surely he would stand out. And that was a scary thing. That somebody.
Walking in the green fields was a
Louise Allers, Dolita C. Benny, Pamela
Sandy Avery, Richard A.
Robert N. Chipman.
Rebecca Needham Anderson,
Alan G. L. Brown. Kenneth Glenn McCullough.
On bomb threats. And as everybody was working through that investigative piece, Ryder trucks, everything became.
Get your hands up, turn around, try to do my weapon and stuff. Very methodical. Instructed him to walk through the process to make sure we were about half. I nudged him with the barrel back to his head. I said, so it's not. Spread him out on the trunk and I open his jacket back. I see the Glock. So I remove it, throw it to the shoulder road, and I have magazines that I like to throw it to the shoulder.
Just murder.
News value of the situation was not sufficient to merit